Welcome back to Bigfoot's Wilderness. Got a new story for you tonight. It's called The Bigfoot of the Kanawha. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. It's been over 40 years, and the nightmares have come back again. And they all started over a word, Kanawha. But this just isn't any story. It's my experience with what could have only have been a Bigfoot. So, aside from my friend Daniel, I never shared my story. And sometimes, even when I'm around my friend, I still have trouble saying the name out loud without wincing. Until now, I'm ready to talk. I just graduated college, I was 22, and not really ready to jump into the workforce. Neither was my best friend Daniel. Not only was he my best friend, but he was also that friend. You know, the one that could talk you into things that you probably wouldn't do. And he'd use his crazy logic to try and legitimize it, and then he'd constantly bring the subject back up, needling you. Well, this was one of those situations. And as kind of a last hurrah, my buddy had been talking to one of his dad's friends that needed some help working on a farm of sorts. A tree farm. Well, a potential tree farm. There was a lot of work to do to get this place into the shape the owner wanted. Some of the land would need to be cleared, and our jobs, since we really didn't have any technical skills, would be to help clear brush and take down smaller trees as needed. We'd work 10 to 12 hours a day, starting fairly early in the morning. The owner had made arrangements for us to stay at a nearby trailer park to which he also owned. Maybe it was more of a piece of land that was cleared with a few trailers on it. The owner seemed to have his hand on all sorts of things. We stayed fairly close to the Kanawha River. I remember it was about a mile walk. I'm a little shaky on the county. It was either Putnam or Kanawha. I've never been back and don't intend to. Anyway, the trailer needed a little tender-loving care. The owner, George, agreed to bring in some salvaged scraps of carpet and some chairs and a table. The thing was rough. I'd never stayed in conditions like this, and I'm sure if my family saw, if they probably did see it, they'd throw me in the back of the car and take me home. But we were men, and we thought it was cool at the time. We fixed it up, made it more livable. The owner dropped by with another spare mattress and some clean sheets that his wife had donated to our cause. And for the next several weeks, this would be our home. There weren't many other trailers on the property, but there was one interesting individual. I'll never forget my shotgun-wielding neighbor, Sharon, an older, stocky lady who wasn't kind to having new tenants to look after, as she called it. Our first night at the trailer, we were welcomed with some foul-mouthed cursing and a shotgun blast over our trailer. What the hell is she shooting at? As we cautiously opened the door, Sharon stood at the bottom of the steps and asked our names. Yeah, nice to meet you. I'm Ted, and this is Daniel. Oh, like the Explorer. You know, Daniel Boone? Yeah, the Explorer, Daniel said. Well, Sharon said, don't be doing no exploring around here, or you'll never be found again. You get my drift? Okay. And then, almost as abruptly, she left. No goodbye, no nice to meet you. She didn't even bring us a pie, we joked. Do you think that was some kind of a threat? You know, about exploring? I don't know, but I forgot to ask her what she was shooting at. Yeah, that kind of rattled me. She's scary. And big. We'd work late most nights, but some evenings, we'd get home around 6, and the heat, if it was too much to bear, we'd get our suits on and head down to the river. We'd bring a 6-pack, some food, and my boombox. Just kind of cool to just chill out and relax. We were trying to save as much as we could, and since the confines of the trailer were kind of dreary, and we could enjoy the cool river for at least a few hours each night, it made it all a little bit more livable. So on one particular Friday night, heading to the river through the woods, Daniel was a few steps ahead of me, and as he approached the clearing to the river, he kind of gave out a heavy sigh. Oh, great. There's a whole family already here. Looks like everybody knows about this spot. There were about 4 or 5 people that we could see in the shallows of the water diagonally to our left. It looked like they had a little child with them that was either getting a bath of sorts or maybe just playing in the water. From my best recollection, we were probably about 100 yards away on a slight hill looking down on them and the river. I really couldn't hear anything more than a few splashes, but something seemed unusual. "Hey Daniel," I whispered, "does something look strange about those people?" It was a few hours before sunset, so we could see them clearly. "They're all in black, and they look huge, even from here." So, Daniel being Daniel, my good old buddy, decides to break the silence and yell to them, "Hey! Hey, hello!" while waving his hands. And that's when everything took a turn towards the weird, as these 5 people just completely froze from what they were doing and slowly turned our way to stare us down. Their heads kind of hung off their shoulders and then slightly twisted to the side. You know, like when you make a funny noise to your dog and he turns his head in that odd way? But the staring match we had continued for what seemed like more than a minute, until we both just soaked in exactly what we were looking at. These weren't people. They were gorillas, but with longer hair, and their body proportions, to me, were much larger, almost gigantic in stature, and looked to be covered mostly in black hair. If these were some kind of gorilla, then the big one was every bit of 9 feet tall. The hair around the face was thick and seemed to hide the eyes and the brow, and the rest of their faces were covered by what looked like beards. The hair seemed to spread across their faces, down their necks, and just kept going. This definitely wasn't any kind of bear. Maybe I should have been okay with the fact that I couldn't see their faces, because in the next moment, the biggest one broke the silence with a low growl. As it took a few steps forward, a lone rock came whistling towards us and landed just a few feet away. "Ted," Daniel whispered, "run!" We covered the distance through the woods back to the trailer in no time flat. We probably looked like a couple of stooges trying to climb over each other in an attempt to get in the door first. "Well, what do we do now?" I said to Daniel. "I forgot the boombox." We worked Saturday and left just after sunrise, but both of us didn't sleep very well. As we arrived, I was still going over everything in my head from last night. George, our boss and owner of the trailer and property, was just pulling up to check on the property's progress. After a few minutes, I blurted out and asked George a question that instantly made me feel stupid and probably made him question why he'd even hired me. "Hey George, can I ask you a question? What kind of animals live around here in these woods?" "Well, there's deer, bear, raccoon, coyote, even some wild pigs. Why?" "What about apes? Do you have apes here too?" I knew there weren't apes in West Virginia, but I just wanted confirmation. Daniel, shocked by my comment, had no idea I was going to ask him about what we saw, so it caught him off guard as he quickly buried his head in his hands. George was a nice man, a busy man, and also quite serious. He looked at Daniel, looked back at me, his expression never changing, took a deep breath and said, "Look, I know you, Daniel. Your father and I go way back, but I don't know you, Ted. And if you're smoking dope, that's fine, but not while you're working, okay? Not on my time. Case closed. And no, Ted, there are no monkeys in West Virginia, okay? What a stupid question. Please get back to work." Even if I was joking, George didn't find it funny at all. We were working till sunset that night and slept in late on Sunday. My radio was on my mind, and after an hour of trying to convince my roommate to come with me, it was a no-go. So I'd make haste back through those deep, dark woods that never seemed as foreboding as they did now. Once I made it to the river, I looked everywhere. No sign of our food, beer, or boombox. Like it was never there. I guess somebody could have taken it. somebody. Running back, I thought I heard something yelling. It reminded me of a woman. Every few seconds the scream would repeat and almost seemed to get a little closer. It was evident that the sheer volume was increasing, and by the fourth scream, I was running as fast as I could, trying to escape back to that beat-up old trailer. As I got closer, I could hear more yelling, but this was different. It was coming from Daniel and Sharon. Apparently, Sharon came outside once the screaming began, and Daniel had stepped outside asking what the noise was. Her only response was, "It's coming this way." She asked where I was, and Daniel had told her about our trips to the river and the boombox. She seemed disgusted that we didn't listen to her. "I see him now. Call your friend. Tell him to hurry up." Daniel was yelling and motioning to me, and as I got within 50 feet of the two, I could hear thrashing behind me, like the trees and leaves were being whipped around by a strong wind. And then a gunshot. Boom! And the thrashing stopped. Sharon scolded Daniel and I for going in those woods to the river like we were a couple of her little kids. I knew she was a little off, but she may have quite possibly saved us. Those last few weeks, the two of us were a little more aware of our surroundings. There were nights when we'd hear tapping on the windows. Other nights, we'd hear into the early morning hours a whoop, whoop, and of course, a gunshot would usually follow. I often wondered whatever happened to her. She wasn't scared of it, unlike the two of us. And as far as I know, we never shared our story with parents or siblings. Years have passed, and living in LA for the last 25 years, I'd all but forgotten. But the reason I'm sharing my story with you is that 40 years later, on a business trip to Charleston, I'd flown in to meet a client for dinner and proceeded to enjoy a few too many drinks at a local gentleman's club later that evening. My client was big into hunting, and he was sharing stories of his travels from around the world. I said to him, "I noticed I flew over a river. What river is it?" "It's the Kanawha." And as if I wasn't feeling the effects of the alcohol enough, I'd grown pale and began to break out in a sweat. "Hey, are you okay?" "Oh yeah, I'm fine. I think I ate something that must have disagreed with me." There was no way I could have shared this with him. My commissions were far more important. The memories came flooding back. "Mike, that had to be the craziest experience of my life. I'm no longer married, but I did attempt once to share the story with my wife. I got an eye roll. I didn't blame her. Unfortunately, the subject of Bigfoot can make just about anyone take pause. Thanks for letting me share my story.